Hey, hi, hello, we're online, and so are you. Welcome back to another exciting episode. I had a conversation with Candice Grobler, also known as Cans on LinkedIn, who is a community guru. She is not only part of many communities online, but she also runs her own community online and has been helping people run their own online community. So she's a great voice in this space. And I had her on to chat about the power of online communities, both being part of them, running them from both sides. So I think it's a particularly interesting conversation for anyone who wants to join a community or is part of an online community, but also someone who is either running their own or thinking about running their own. And I think there is a lot of very practical insights. Candice is great at giving practical insights. So I hope this is interesting, and yeah, let's get straight to it. I really like this as an opener, as far as these kinds of conversations go. But was there an aha moment for you? Like, was there a moment when you first felt the power that an online community can have? And this might be something you experienced yourself or something you saw because of the spaces in which you work. But yeah, was there this sort of moment where it sort of really hit you how powerful an online community can be?
Yes, there was a very defining moment, and I think it was a moment when a lot of people have a lot of shared trauma, and that was the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, I ended up being retrenched from my job, as you know, and it was heartbreaking for me. I lost my community. I was ended up locked in a house with someone who was not specifically very healthy for me, and I was very alone. And so not only was I bored, I was also very fortunate that everybody else was in this weird space of having to transition online and find a way to resume work, resume some kind of normal, still get paid, still see people and not go crazy. And I was weirdly in a space where I actually had the skills to help them. And so it was very interesting to me helping so many, mostly nonprofits, but also community groups transition from going in person to suddenly having to be online on a dime or zero budget. And that made me feel A, useful, B, it made me feel like my skills were valuable at a time when my company didn't think they were valuable. And lastly, it really changed my perspective, realizing that I don't have to be alone just because I'm isolated, which was quite an important career marker for me, and deciding that this is what I actually want to go into for the rest of at least the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really great benefit, and one which I can relate to as well. I think that's probably one of the biggest value adds that I felt from online communities outside of, all the other networking opportunities. I think there is that sense of being part of something greater than yourself. And I think that's maybe unique to an online community because it bridges a lot of the geographical or physical boundaries that we normally have to struggle with. A conference will have a price point that makes it more exclusive, or a physical event will have you will have to travel somewhere, you have to physically move yourself, whereas online digital communities you can sort of tap into. That barrier to entry is lowered a lot. But I think I'm curious from your perspective, because this is something I struggle with a lot, is this idea of how to show up in an online community. And I know it's very community dependent in a lot of ways, but I think generally, even though you don't have to look someone in the eye, which maybe reduces some of the anxiety around it, I think it still feels like you have to prove your worth or pitch yourself or show up in a certain professional way. Is there a way to not have to struggle with that, or is there a way where you can avoid feeling like constantly needing to pitch?
The first is understand your audience. Now, you did say it's community dependent, but You have to know when you're about to post a message, when you're about to share an article, who else is in that space. What is their intention for being there? Nobody joins a community in order to be sold to. So showing up in that way is kind of inappropriate, honestly, if you think about what that audience is there to do. And so if you hold the audience in mind and think, what do they want out of this space? How can I align with that, and how can I provide value rather than just showing up blasting what I do? And that takes me to my second point, or my second tip, is that you should rather talk about what you did than about what you do. Because what you do puts yourself on a pedestal and what your ideal state is, right? Like that perfect pitch, that 2-minute line that you almost memorize accidentally. But if you talk about what you did, then that comes from a space of, it proves your credibility in some extent, because it proves your experience, it proves what you're capable of. But if you also talk about what you did, other people know that that's your experience. It's not necessarily the right experience, but it is one view that they could potentially adopt and they can learn from. And that puts you in a position of peer, mentor, rather than instructor and salesy person, basically. And then my last tip is to contribute answers rather than questions. My last point is to contribute answers to other people's questions rather than just your own insights, because going in and sharing what you've made, sharing what you've done, again, that is what your intention might be in that community. And if that is your purpose, people will spot it. They're not going to want to connect with you. People can smell that kind of thing a mile away. So if you're there to genuinely get to know them, genuinely get to understand what they're dealing with, then what you do comes naturally as a suggestion, and it demonstrates your capability rather than prescribes it or tells people what they get out of it, you know?
I think a very interesting sort of follow-up question that I want to challenge you on, because I think those tips, super useful. I think there's also the risk, especially when someone's maybe needing to put more thought into this because it's uncomfortable or new to them in terms of showing up in online community. I think there's the risk that it comes across as very rehearsed or scripted, or like you're trying to be valuable, you're trying to engage. So how do you, because you're part of many a community online, how do you prioritize the authenticity aspect? Because I think that's really what creates a fabric of value for everyone.
I know if I'm there to do something for me, then I'm probably not coming from an authentic space, right? So that's one thing. When I'm in a community, I always make sure I join a community with a purpose, okay? There's some communities you can join in order to learn from. That's normally, you want to spend quite a lot of time there. There's some communities you join because you want to lead gen from. You need clients from them, or you want to prove that you are a thought leader in that space, right? Now, it's really good to be in those communities still, but if you think about how you engage when you're in your learning community, what would you do? When someone posts something, you would challenge them, you would ask questions, you would engage with the content in a way that is, in that moment, relevant and insightful, and like showing that you are present in that conversation. I see lots of LinkedIn comments where people basically just go exactly like ChatGPT, like, I agree with you, everything is lovely, you know, but engage critically with the thing. Ask them why. I'm very curious. Ask for something you don't understand, you know. If you engage in that way, then when people do ask you to share, your time does come. Turn taking happens naturally in these kinds of conversations. And so if you prioritize first being present, first being interested and really critically engaging, then prioritize answering, that like I hope that answers your question, because I think it is very important to show up authentic, because people will not engage otherwise. They will tell.
Yeah. And I think what you said at the beginning is really the crux of the issue, is that if you're only joining for yourself, like if there is only the goal of, or if you only think about what can I get out of it, I think it makes it really hard to show up in a way that is authentic, because you're always going to be thinking, self-centered is maybe too strong a word, but I think you need to have the sort of mirror perspective that you're thinking about, like, how do I show up for the other people in the community? And the other question I was going to ask was this idea of like how, and maybe this is more from the other side, so not a community member, but a community owner, is this idea of like what makes people stick around in a community. I think that is a great point. If they feel like they are being critically engaged, or that, you know, maybe they have the opportunity to critically engage themselves, I think that is probably one aspect to why people stick around in a community. Is there anything else that comes to mind as, you know, yourself a community owner?
Yes, I think the biggest mistake, it comes off of the biggest mistake people make, is they think like, I've got a lot of content, I can tell you all the information about anything, I'm the most well-read person. And sorry to tell you, in an age of AI, information is cheap. It is very, very cheap. In an age where people are struggling to pay attention, struggling to be accountable, things like accountability buddies is harder to find. Somewhere where you can actually be engaged, learn how to build a habit, and actually achieve some kind of transformation at the end. Like, people pay for transformation, not information. It's just a dime a dozen these days. And so in your community, you need to understand, what is the transformational journey that someone is on? Because then you can say to them, I know where you are. I'm going to put you on a roadmap, and this is what you're going to do in our community. This is how you're going to achieve success. And then you can follow them on that journey and help them achieve it. And that is all very clear, very easy to follow. It's a lovely journey. People love a map, because AI can give you 20,000 of those in a second, you know, but they can't give you one that they prove to work and that they actually hold you accountable to sticking to it. And that's what people want in a community. If you are running a community, they are looking for, especially if it's a growth kind of community, you know, you really want to make sure the transformation people want, they are getting. Even if that is learning how to create the perfect gown for a cosplay event, you know?
I think we're touching on like some really important aspects to engaging in online communities. And I think these are these loop back to this idea of how they're so powerful, and how, you know, you can find that sense of I'm not alone anymore, because you have the accountability buddies, you have people that challenge you, you have people to learn from or to teach, depending which side of the sort of mentor spectrum you want to be on. You know, if we're talking about someone who's particularly shy or doesn't feel super comfortable about networking online, I think these things sound good in theory, but are probably quite hard to do. Is there, or put it differently, what's like a really small step someone can take, a small but impactful step someone can take, that, you know, helps them either find their community or engage in a community?
The first thing and the only tip I have, especially if you have low energy or you hate like engaging online or it just brings you anxiety, you have to design your environment. And that is the benefit of the online space, right? And when I say design your environment, I mean understand, are you the kind of person who needs to be able to check out very quickly? Like you drop spoons immediately and then you need to be out of there. Or are you somebody who just doesn't know what to say in a situation, right? That means you can go into that situation knowing and prepared for what you can do. If you hate showing up on camera, why not get a pen pal? That is a way. There are online pen pal communities where you never have to meet the person on a call ever, but that might be the ideal way to network for you. Maybe you could even just set aside half an hour and say, I just need to show up for half an hour, or all I need to do is ask one new question to 3 new people in the room, if that's the way you do it. But choose the specific environment that works for your nervous system, because honestly, like if you want to go shark cage diving, that seems safer than playing with your professional, with your career, when you're not 100% sure what you're doing, or if you don't feel confident. Create one small little challenge for yourself and design your environment so that you're not fully in your comfort zone, you are challenged, but that you are safe. Because safety is so important in an online space and very unique. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's super important. Something I've definitely learned about being in online communities is that, I think a lot of people, they find a community they want to be a part of and then try, to use your words, design their environment. And often there's then a mismatch because the way the community has been set up doesn't fit the sort of boundaries someone has set. Whereas if you first set your boundaries and then find the community that fits that really well, I think that is probably a firstly far less stressful way of doing it, but also brings you to a point where you're probably going to stay in that community longer. And, I think there's also that sense of community fatigue where the first month you're super active, and then the second month you're less active, and then the third month you're even less active. And I wonder if, and I'm sure, almost 100% sure you've had a similar experience where it starts feeling more draining than nourishing, even though you've maybe you've designed your environment. But are there things you do for yourself that help keep it nourishing as opposed to becoming a drain?
So I think I'm notoriously pretty bad at boundaries. Let me just put it out there. I'm going to be very candid. I am trying to get better at it this year because I've realized that my energy is not infinite. But if I treat my energy like it is, then other people start to devalue my energy. I'm basically it's like inflation, right? And so I'm a consultant. I charge for my time, I charge for my energy, and if I'm the one devaluing it, then why I can't complain that I'm not earning enough. I can't complain that, the world doesn't value me when I'm not valuing my own time. And so, there's that saying that when people hear your no, they will appreciate your yes so much more. And so my new default is no, because it's always easy to change my mind and say yes later. No is very hard for me. So if I can say no up front, I still have some time to go back and be like, actually, you know what? I've changed my mind. I would like to. There's very few decisions in life that are irreversible. There's one or two, there's a certain type of decision you can't go back on. But in a community setting, there's very many opportunities. And I would much rather say no first than say yes, which I did. I spoke at 34 events last year. It was way too much. I said yes so much that I just couldn't filter out the noise. Whereas now, starting with no gives me time to think about it and really consider, does this benefit me? Am I doing this without resentment? Or am I gonna, an hour before I have to go, or 30 minutes, try and cancel because I'm so anxious and I really don't actually want to do this thing? So that's what I'm working on. But I know that it is really difficult for people who are people pleasers to set those boundaries. And so the last thing that I'll share is that, and it's something that someone kind of smacked me with in some senses, is that people pleasers are not being honest. It is dishonest. It really, as much as you think you're helping someone else, you're just avoiding conflict. And if you've set up a safe space, if this is a good community and these are people that are going to respect you, healthy conflict it should be possible. You should be able to deal with that. And if you're avoiding that conflict, then that is something that you need to sit with a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think hopefully that's a nice bit of reassurance, because I think, I mean, when you join a community, you want to feel like you're a valuable member. So I think there is that default to just, always be online, or, for some people it might be always saying yes, or for others it might be always commenting, and that can really take a toll. And then, if you build a pattern, people start to expect that from you. And so it becomes harder and harder and harder to step back. And I think that's, goes back to what you said about designing your environment. If you're someone who falls into those patterns quickly, then you can find a community where, maybe it's a smaller group of people, where you're not joining a community of 1,000, where you feel like everyone needs your time. But I think that makes total sense. To sort of to close off our little chat, I'm particularly curious from you, because of the experience you've had in online communities and the people you've engaged with and the people you've spoken to about what you do. Is there, or rather, what is something that you wish more people understood about, building these real connections in a virtual space?
Just because it's online and just because it's in a marketing team does not mean it's about the product. It is all about the people. A community is a product of your brand. Like I say that all the time. It is a growth engine. It will help you with your marketing. It will help your business grow. However, at the end of the day, you do not own the people in the community. As much as you may have their email address, you may be able to contact them. Like, more and more and more, I see people treating community like a marketing tool, when in fact it is a space where there's actual real opportunity to build a shared sense of experience. Now, we rarely have that these days. Back in the day, we would, someone would drop an album, everyone would go watch that album, listen to that album, everyone would be talking about it for the next 2 weeks. We have very rare shared moments of monoculture, of shared experience, and that is what you're creating in an online community, is you're giving people an opportunity to share something, to build this intertextual connection that can honestly be emotionally so deep and resonate in a way that, yes, makes them sticky to your brand, yes, makes them want to be in that area, but they're not there because of the branding or the pretty graphics. They're there because of how you made them feel. And I mean, we all know Maya Angelou's quote about people remember how you make them feel. And that is still true. And I really wish all the marketers out there, those are the people I'm helping at the most right now, is, yes, you're doing marketing, but how do you go a little bit back to community? Because community has always existed. Business hasn't, not in the way we have. Now, that is core and central. And if we do that, then your community will heal people and help people and transform them. And it's so exciting.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with friends and family that you think might find it interesting too. And if you're feeling super, super nice, then leave a review. It would be super appreciated. And I'd smile a lot. But thank you, and hopefully see you on the next episode.